Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. There was an hour when the city seemed to hold its breath, that dirty twilight between the gold of shop windows and the gray of the sewers. In the glass-walled lobby of a building that smelled of clean money and new cabinetry, a millionaire dressed like a monument, perfectly tailored suit, watched that jingled his wealth, gazed at a framed photograph on the console table, a little girl with a fixed smile, her eyes wide open like windows one no longer dares to cross. Her name was Emily. She had died 2 years earlier, in a nighttime accident that the newspapers had summarized in 2 lines. He repeated the gestures he had been taught to keep his grief in check, erasing the traces of sadness from his face, organizing his papers, continuing to make decisions. People admired the skill of well-managed grief. He had been praised for it. The lobby door clicked. A draft, then a figure that shouldn't have been there, like a discordant note in a well-ordered symphony, a homeless woman, her hair tangled, her coat torn, her hands tangled around a plastic bag. She entered silently, as if the air itself recognized the necessity of her footsteps. The bouncers usually turned her away. Tonight, no one paid her any attention. Perhaps no one wanted to witness it. She walked over to the console and placed her palms on Emily's photograph as if touching a sacred object. The millionaire, taken aback, swallowed his anger and a touch of shame. Who was this stranger to dare touch what belonged to him? The woman looked up, her eyes tired but strangely clear. There was a lack of calculation in her gaze, and a question unlike anything he had ever known. Her voice, when she spoke, was both cracked and clear. "Sir, may I wake your dead daughter?" The words fell in the hall like a stone into water. A measured reaction, a reprimand, a shout, had been expected. Instead, something ancient and uncontrollable broke through the millionaire's defenses. His mouth trembled, he sought a cover of words. "It's impossible, leave," but the woman looked at him as one contemplates the truth of a fire. She offered no explanation. She didn't need one, or at least that's what she thought. She put her bag down, took out a small cardboard box, and gently placed it on the console table next to the photograph. The box was worn. A red ribbon had been untied and retied so many times that it was losing its color. "She doesn't come back like in the stories," the woman said. "I can't give her back her breath. But I can awaken what is called death, memory, warmth, scent. I can bring back things that your money tried to bury." The millionaire felt his defenses waver. His daughter had been a wound he had learned to hide beneath gifts, charitable foundations, and overly polite evenings. And now a woman who possessed nothing, neither the title nor the trappings of hope, was offering him something he himself had never known how to ask for. There was a long silence, a shared breath between 2 worlds. Outside, the city continued to breathe differently, cars, sirens, distant laughter. In the lobby, the question remained, heavy like a promise. "What do you want in return?" the man finally asked, in a voice that was too dry. The woman smiled, a slight crease that was neither pity nor cunning. "Nothing but your truth, sir. Nothing but the truth about Emily." He shrugged, as if to ward off the misery. But his hand trembled, and he remembered a photograph he had never published, a broken toy hidden in a drawer, a convenient lie about a stormy night. The millionaire understood, with the harsh clarity of penalties, that waking his daughter might also awaken things he had thought buried, and had paid to bury. The woman opened her box. Inside were simple objects, a small leather shoe, a lock of hair tied with a ribbon, a folded piece of paper with a child's handwriting. She placed them on the console table as one would place offerings on an altar. "You can leave now," she said softly. "Or you can listen to me." The millionaire looked at these objects, and for the first time in 2 years, the photos seemed to breathe. The sun was already low behind the skyscrapers, stretching shadows across the cobblestone streets of Manhattan. In his glass-walled office, Henry Whitmore the millionaire stared at the photo of Emily. His eyes, usually calculating and cold, shone with a worry he thought had long since died out. Emily wasn't just his daughter, she was the memory of a mistake he had never confessed. She was 6 years old when she fell from the terrace of their penthouse, an accident summed up in the newspapers as tragic misfortune. But Henry knew it was more complicated than that. That night, he had left the house for an urgent business dinner, leaving the little girl alone in the care of a nanny he had chosen on the recommendation of a colleague. Emily, the nanny, had been careless. Too absorbed in her phone and her own life, she had left the patio door ajar. The fall was swift, silent to the outside world, but in Henry's mind, the crash still echoed like a thunderclap. Since then, Henry had buried the guilt under charitable foundations, luxury travel, and endless meetings. No one was to know that he felt responsible. No one, except this stranger, the homeless woman, who now dared to speak to him about Emily as if she could still bring her back to life. Henry thought back to their meeting in the lobby. Clara, the homeless woman, had something no one in his life had ever possessed, a quiet audacity and a certainty that defied the laws of the material world. She hadn't simply asked, "Can I wake your dead daughter?" She had imposed the idea that it was possible, that her daughter's memory, warmth, and scent could return through gestures, objects, and perhaps, a hidden truth. Henry stood up and approached the desk, his hands trembling. He picked up the small leather shoe Clara had placed on the console. It was tiny, almost fragile, but the leather still bore the imprint of a life he had almost lost. He felt his heart clench. He remembered Emily's laughter, her hurried little steps in the hallway, and the evening everything had changed. He realized he had always avoided a crucial detail. Emily, his daughter, had kept a secret diary. In it, Emily had left simple words, childlike thoughts, but also clues to her deepest emotions and the small pains of life she endured with an absent father. Henry had never opened the diary after her death, for fear of what he might find, a mixture of tender memories and unspoken reproaches he didn't want to hear. For the first time in years, Henry understood that the key to awakening Emily lay in that diary. And that Clara knew something he didn't yet know. He closed his eyes for a moment, and the pain rose like a wave he thought he had tamed. The glow of twilight filtered through the office, casting the golden reflections of Manhattan onto the walls. In the heavy silence, Henry felt his world was about to change. A murmur escaped her lips. "Show me what I've never dared to see." And, in the shadows of the room, Clara seemed to smile, as if she knew exactly what he meant. The rain had begun to fall on Manhattan, fine and persistent, striking the penthouse windows with an obsessive rhythm. Henry Whitmore remained standing in his study, Emily's journal clutched to his chest, his fingers trembling. Clara stood by the window, motionless, watching the city as if she could read its soul in the reflections of the flickering lights. "You have to read everything, Henry," she said in a low, firm but strangely gentle voice. Everything she wrote, the fears, the joys, the secrets. If you really want to awaken her, you must first confront what she went through. Henry nodded, a mixture of fear and curiosity coursing through him. He opened the journal carefully, as one might handle a sacred object, and the first page revealed a childlike, delicate, slightly trembling handwriting. "Dear Dad, I waited for you last night, but you didn't come back. I cried, but I still love you. Promise me you'll always watch over me." Henry's eyes filled with tears. Every word was a cruel reminder of her absence, of her neglect. But as he turned the pages, he also discovered details he had never seen before. Emily had observed the world with a lucidity he himself had never possessed. She wrote about simple moments, the cat she had saved from a tree, the rain sliding down the window, the way he read her stories before leaving. But the further he went, the more he realized that some pages seemed directed toward someone else. Clara approached and pointed to a particular page. "Read this." Henry read in a low voice. "Dad, if you're reading this after I've left, know that I've left clues for you. There are things you've forgotten, moments you've hidden away, and if you can see what I've hidden in the things you own, maybe you can find me." Henry felt his heart race. Find Emily again? Was it possible? Was it just child's play, or did Clara actually know something he didn't yet understand? Clara broke the silence. "You see these objects I brought? They aren't just souvenirs. They are keys." She touched them, she loved them, she imagined them. And now, they can guide you to what she wanted you to know. Henry turned to the next page and came across a drawing Emily had made. A house, some trees, and a small figure holding an invisible hand. His eyes fixed on the small circle drawn around the figure. The house was the penthouse, the trees the neighboring park, and the hand seemed to be offering him something he hadn't known since her death. For the first time, Henry understood that, awakening, Emily wasn't about defying death, but about bringing her memories, her gestures, and her secrets hidden in the real world back to life. And to do that, he had to accept the whole truth he had tried to forget. Clara looked at him, her eyes sparkling in the light from the street lamps that shone through the glass. "Are you ready to see what you've always refused to see?" Henry took a deep breath. A light rain fell against the windows, like a whisper from the past. And for the first time in 2 years, he felt that his daughter's death might not be the end, but the beginning of a path he had never dared to take. The next morning, Manhattan was enveloped in a light fog, and the city seemed less hurried, as if it too were waiting for some truth to awaken. Henry Whitmore, still shaken by reading the newspaper, held in his hands the small box Clara had brought. The items inside were simple: Emily's leather shoe, a lock of hair tied with a red ribbon, and a folded sheet of paper with childlike handwriting. Clara looked at him with unwavering seriousness. "Start with the first object. Let it speak to you." Henry picked up the shoe. It was tiny, worn at the heel, but he could feel the invisible imprint of his daughter. He stroked it gently, and in his mind, a hazy memory resurfaced: Emily running barefoot across the living room floor, laughing, asking her father to catch her. The memory stung his heart. He felt a lump in his throat, a mixture of pain and nostalgia. Then he took the lock of hair. The mere scent of ribbon still carried a subtle fragrance, like Emily's after a bath, light and sweet. Henry inhaled deeply, and a wave of emotion he had suppressed for 2 years washed over him. Clara watched in silence, knowing this moment was necessary. "Every object has a story," she said finally. "Every memory is a key. The truth is hidden in what you refuse to see." Henry took out the folded sheet of paper. Emily's words were simple, but precise. "Dad, if you really want to find me, start where we laughed the most. Where I told you my secrets and you promised to always listen to me." Henry frowned. He knew exactly where this was leading: Central Park, under the large oak tree where he had promised Emily they would play together every Sunday. He stood up, seized by an urgency he had never felt before, and grabbed his coat. Clara followed him silently. She didn't speak along the way, but Henry sensed her presence like an invisible guide. When they arrived at the park, the crisp wind stirred the dead leaves, and the oak tree stood like an ancient guardian of time. Henry placed the box on the bench where Emily had told her stories so many times. He took out the shoe, then the lock of hair, and finally the leaf. He looked at the ground, remembering every detail: Emily's laughter, the little blue scarf she had left hanging on the lowest branch, the wind playing in her hair. Clara broke the silence. "Now, let your heart show you what comes next." Henry closed his eyes. Memories of Emily seemed to come alive around him, as if each object acted as a catalyst. And at the precise moment he inhaled deeply, he heard a soft, almost inaudible laugh, as if carried on the wind. The sound sent a shiver down his spine. He realized that, awakening, his daughter didn't mean defying death. It meant reliving every moment they had shared, every secret she had confided in him, and facing his own failings to fully honor her. A shiver ran down his spine when he sensed, for the first time in a long time, that Emily hadn't completely left. That something inside her was waiting, silently, for her father to finally be ready to listen. Clara placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is only the beginning, Henry. The real awakening starts now." Henry nodded, determined. He knew this path would be painful, that long-buried secrets would surface, but for the first time, he felt hope that the past could guide him towards something he had thought impossible: reconnecting with his daughter, even after death. The sun was setting behind the skyscrapers, bathing Central Park in a shimmering, golden light. Henry Whitmore sat on the bench, Emily's diary open before him, surrounded by the objects that had stirred his memories. Clara stood apart, silent, but her gaze betrayed an almost supernatural anticipation. Henry turned the pages slowly, each word seeming to breathe with him. Then he came across a section he had never read before, a hidden passage between two folded pages. "Dad, I know that sometimes you're sad and that you leave for work. But I want you to know something I haven't told anyone. That night, I heard you talking to Mom on the phone. You were angry. But what I never understood is why you weren't there when I needed you. Dad, promise me you won't hide anything anymore. Even if it's hard." Henry felt his hands tremble. The journal revealed something he had buried deep in his memory, a conversation he'd had with his wife, a family secret connected to Emily's accident. The truth hit him hard. Emily wasn't just the victim of an accident, she had sensed tensions Henry thought he had hidden. Clara approached and whispered, "It's not just a diary. It's a mirror. Every word she wrote reflects back to you what you refuse to see." Henry closed his eyes and remembered. That night, there had been a silent argument with his wife. Words he had never spoken aloud, frustrations and fears that had spiraled out of control. And while he thought he was protecting his daughter by staying away, he had actually given up a part of his innocence. The shock was so intense that he felt his knees buckle. Clara gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "The secret you are now discovering is the key. You must face the truth to awaken her, Henry. Not just her memories, but yourself." Henry nodded, his throat tight. He realized that, awakening Emily would not be a simple tribute, it was a confrontation with all the mistakes he had made as a father and as a man. He continued reading the next passage, and a shiver ran through his body. "Dad, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. But I've left you clues. Look for them in the things I loved, in the places where I laughed, and maybe you'll be able to understand what I wanted to tell you, even after my death." Henry looked up and met Clara's gaze. There was a silent promise in her eyes. She knew how to turn these clues into truth. "So let's begin," she said. "Every object, every word, every memory, everything will lead you to her. But know that this path will not be easy." Henry took a deep breath. The fear, the guilt, the pain, it was all still there, lurking deep inside him. But a spark of hope was also rising. For the first time, he felt that the past could show him how to reconnect with Emily. Even after death. He looked at the newspaper, the objects, and the park around him. The leaves swirled, carrying with them an echo of children's laughter, a reminder that Emily's truth was waiting to be discovered. And he knew that the real awakening had only just begun. The icy wind of Manhattan blew through the narrow, cobblestone streets, carrying with it the smells of coffee, rain, and damp concrete. Henry Whitmore and Clara walked side by side, silent but attentive, Emily's box in Henry's hands. Every object was a key, every memory an invisible thread guiding them through the city. Clara stopped in front of a small cafe on a street corner, a modest place Henry had never noticed despite all his visits to the neighborhood. "This is it," she murmured. "She used to come here often after school. Emily always left a note for someone, sometimes for you." Henry entered, his heart pounding. The owner, an old man with gray hair and gentle eyes, recognized them immediately. "Are you looking for little Emily?" he asked with a faint, sad smile. "She always left drawings or notes on the blackboard behind the counter." Henry felt a lump form in his throat. He approached the board, covered with messages from children who had frequented the cafe. And there, half erased by time, he recognized Emily's drawing, a tree, a house, and a silhouette holding an invisible hand, exactly like in the newspaper. Clara placed her hand on Henry's shoulder. "Look at the details. What she left here isn't just a memory. It's a message." Henry examined the drawing more closely and noticed a small symbol he had previously ignored, a circle drawn around one of the house's windows. His heart raced. This circle corresponded to the window of Emily's bedroom in the penthouse, the place where he should have been the night of the accident. "She's showing me where to start," Henry murmured, realizing that each clue brought him closer to a truth he had never dared to face. Clara nodded. "Yes. And these traces aren't just memories. They confront you with what you've avoided. What you need to see, what you need to feel, that's where the awakening begins. Henry clutched the box to his chest, feeling his daughter's presence in every object, in every word she left behind. He knew now that to awaken Emily, he had to find all the clues she had scattered, understand their messages, and finally accept all her mistakes. As they left the cafe, Henry glanced one last time at the blackboard, as if to tell his daughter he was ready. And, in a breath of wind, he thought he heard a soft, almost inaudible laugh, like an echo from the past guiding them towards what lay ahead. Henry felt a new strength rising within him. The road would be long and painful, but each clue brought his daughter's memory closer to life, or at least to the presence she wanted him to feel. Clara smiled silently, knowing that they had just taken the first step on a journey that would awaken the past, the truth, and perhaps even the soul of Emily herself. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a bright and shining city, where the cobblestones reflected the lights of the streetlights. Henry and Clara were walking in a neighborhood he had almost forgotten, the one from his childhood, before wealth and business took over his life. Clara stopped in front of an old, abandoned house, surrounded by rusty gates and half-wild gardens. "This is it," she said simply. "This is where Emily left something that you were supposed to find yourself." Henry felt his heart sink. The house was nothing spectacular, it even seemed insignificant, almost forgotten. But Emily's diary and the previous clues had prepared him, every object, every memory, led to this precise place. They went through the gate, and the wind rustled the dead leaves around them. Henry went in first, the floorboards creaking under his feet. Inside, everything was dusty, covered with a thin layer of time. But in a corner of the main room, under an old, torn rug, he found a wooden box that Emily had decorated with small, childlike drawings. Clara knelt beside him. "Open it." Henry took a deep breath and lifted the lid. Inside, he found objects he had never seen before, letters Emily had written to her mother, small forgotten toys, and a leather-bound notebook containing what appeared to be her most intimate thoughts. He began to read, and each line struck him harder than the last. Emily wrote of happy memories, but also of fears, frustrations, and questions he had never answered. Then, he came across a page that left him breathless. "Dad, if you're reading this, you need to know the truth. What you believe to be an accident isn't everything. Some things aren't your fault, but some are. There are secrets you need to face before you can truly find me again." Henry felt the pain rising, but also a dull anger. He understood that this place hid part of the truth he had ignored, a truth that concerned not only the accident, but also decisions he had made without thinking about the consequences for his daughter. Clara looked at him gravely. "Henry, you can't run away anymore. What you find here will change you. You must choose, confront what you've hidden or remain in the illusion that everything is under control." Henry closed his eyes. Every fiber of his being screamed that he had to discover everything, that he had to understand Emily beyond death. And in that silence, he knew that the next step would be the most difficult. He would have to confront long-buried family secrets, and his choices would determine whether Emily could truly come back to him. He took the box in his hands and, for the first time, he felt ready to confront not only his daughter's past, but his own, and to accept the truth, however painful it might be. Clara placed a hand on his shoulder. "The path is dangerous, Henry. But it's the only one that leads to her." Henry nodded, his heart heavy but resolute. He knew that this forgotten place had just revealed a crucial part of the truth, and that the real ordeal was only just beginning. Night had fallen on Manhattan, and the lights of the skyscrapers cast flickering silhouettes against the dark sky. Henry Whitmore sat on the edge of the park near the old abandoned house, Emily's box beside him. Clara stood back, silent, watching every move of the man who had just uncovered secrets he would have preferred to remain ignorant of. Henry leafed through the leather-bound notebook again. One page in particular caught his eye. "Dad, if you truly want to find me again, you must understand this. Some truths you're hiding hurt those you love more than any loss. But if you refuse to face them, you'll never be able to touch me again." He felt a lump in his throat. What the newspaper revealed wasn't just about the accident, but about decisions in his professional and personal life that had indirectly affected Emily. Henry knew he had sacrificed too much time with her for the sake of business, leaving a void in his life and in his daughter's. Clara broke the silence. You have to decide, Henry. You can continue to run from the truth or confront what you've avoided for years. If you want to awaken her, you have to do it now. Henry looked at the box and felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He understood that Emily's memory could only be awakened if he agreed to reveal the truth, not only to himself, but also to his family and everyone affected by his past decisions. This meant risking his image, his reputation, and his business, but also creating a genuine connection with his daughter's memory. Her heart was racing. Every fiber of her being screamed to remain in the comfortable illusion of oblivion. But a small inner voice, the same one that had heard Emily's laughter in the wind, whispered to her, "This is your chance to fix what can be fixed, even after death." Henry closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Very well. I'll do it. I'll face everything." Clara smiled slightly, a mixture of relief and pride. "So let's begin. The first step is to restore what she loved, to understand her gestures, and to repair what you can." Henry nodded, his heart both heavy and light. He knew the road ahead would be painful, that every clue from Emily would confront him with his failures and regrets. But for the first time since her death, he felt that Emily's memory could be revived, thanks to his courage and his determination to find the truth. And in the silence of the night, surrounded by the shadows of the city, Henry understood that the true awakening would not be magical, but profoundly human. It was about confrontations, redemption and love rediscovered, even after loss. The next morning, Henry and Clara walked the streets of Manhattan with renewed determination. Emily's box and the journal lay in Henry's bag, each item treated like a fragile treasure. Every step seemed to bring them closer to a world he had forgotten, Emily's universe, her curiosity, her joy, and her secrets. The first place Emily had noted in her diary was the old neighborhood library, a modest building but full of memories for her. Henry entered, immediately smelling the scent of old wood and yellowed paper. The bookshelves seemed to speak, and in the corner of a children's section, he found a small box hidden behind the picture books. Clara looked at him with a half-smile. "She wanted you to find her here." Henry opened the box and discovered a small sketchbook of Emily's drawings, her first attempts at writing stories. The illustrations showed scenes he had completely forgotten: the family gathered for a picnic, the dog she had adopted, and a house that looked strangely like their penthouse. Each image seemed animated, as if Emily had wanted her father to return to those precise moments, to remember the life they shared before the tragedy. Henry felt a lump form in his throat. He had never imagined how much every detail meant to her, how she had observed and waited for him to see it. The newspaper then pointed to a smaller park where Emily played with her friends after school. There, under an old oak tree, Henry found a small box buried lightly in the ground, as if she had hidden it herself. Inside were letters never sent, words of love for her father, apologies for her childhood tantrums, and dreams she hoped to share one day. Henry began to read, his hands trembling. Each word brought him closer to her, each memory awakened an emotion he thought was lost. Clara placed her hand on his. "You see? Every clue, every object, she guides you toward what you've missed. And each step brings you closer to the truth." Henry looked up, and for the first time in a long time, he thought he heard a soft laugh, like a breath in the wind. A laugh that told him he was on the right path. They continued to follow the clues, each place revealing a fragment of Emily's life. The house where she played as a child, the cafe where she spent hours drawing, the bookstore where she loved to browse through stories. Each place carried a hidden message, a memory she wanted to share, and a lesson about the importance of presence and attention. Henry then understood an essential truth: waking up Emily did not mean bringing her back physically, but reviving her memory and her presence in every gesture, every place, and every object that she had loved. As they progressed, Henry felt his heart lighten. Guilt, pain, and fear began to transform into strength and hope. And somewhere in that vast and unforgiving city, he felt that Emily, even in her absence, was guiding him step by step toward a reconciliation with herself, with himself, and with the past. Twilight enveloped Manhattan in an orange and purple veil. Henry and Clara walked through an old residential neighborhood, lined with stately but silent houses. According to the newspaper, the final clue was in his wife's old family home, a place Henry had avoided since the tragedy. They crossed the gate, and Henry felt his heart clench. Each step awakened painful memories, stifled arguments, lost laughter, and the presence of Emily whom he had never been able to protect. Clara pointed to the old attic, covered in cobwebs and dust. "This is it. This is where she left the last message." Henry went up the stairs, breathless. In a corner, covered with a blanket, was a wooden chest that Emily had painted in bright colors, with her first name clumsily written on it. He opened the chest and discovered letters, objects, and finally a sealed letter addressed to him. He carefully picked it up and began to read. "Dad, if you're reading this, it means you're finally ready. I have to tell you something I've never told anyone. It wasn't a complete accident. That night, I wanted to tell you about a secret I'd discovered, but I fell. You should know that some of Mom's choices and mine led to that fall. But I don't blame you. I just want you to understand and never forget, love isn't measured by what we do perfectly, but by what we try to fix." Henry felt his hands tremble, and the letter almost slipped from his fingers. The truth was more complex than he had imagined. Emily's death wasn't entirely his fault, but the result of a chain of choices and family secrets he now had to confront. Clara placed her hand on his shoulder. "You see, Henry, every clue has prepared you for this moment. You now know that waking Emily means accepting the whole truth, even the painful part." Henry closed his eyes. The guilt he had carried for 2 years mingled with understanding, love, and a strange peace. He finally understood that reconciliation with his daughter would not come from a miracle, but from his ability to accept, heal, and honor her memories. A warm breath swept through the room, like a light, invisible breeze. And in that breath, Henry thought he heard, for the first time, Emily's soft voice whispering to him, "Dad, thank you for coming." With a heavy but peaceful heart, Henry knew he had reached the culmination of his journey. The final clue had revealed not only the truth about his daughter, but also about himself. And for the first time since the tragedy, he felt Emily's presence alive in his memories and in his heart. Morning dawned over Manhattan, clear and bright, washing away the previous day's rain. Henry Whitmore stood on the penthouse balcony, holding Emily's journal and belongings in his hands. Every memory, every clue, every word he had read in the preceding days had led him here, a mixture of pain, guilt, and reconciliation. Clara stood by his side, silent but present, like a benevolent shadow that had guided Henry on this emotional journey. Henry took a deep breath. He knew that true awakening wasn't magical, but human. He couldn't physically bring Emily back, but he could revive her presence through his memories, his belongings, and the gestures he would perform to honor her memory. He placed each object on the living room table, the shoe, the lock of hair, the drawings and letters, each becoming a shrine to memory. He reread aloud Emily's last message, feeling every emotion, every breath of her voice through the words she had left behind. Then he made a decision. He would open his life to others, share the truth about his mistakes and his daughter, and transform his grief into concrete actions, donations to children's causes, mentoring programs, and a sincere commitment to being there for those in need. Clara smiled gently. "You see, Henry, she never really left this world. Every gesture you make now, every memory you honor, it's her coming back." Henry closed his eyes, letting a tear slide down his cheek. For the first time in 2 years, he felt peace. He murmured, "I found you, Emily, in every breath, every memory, every gesture. I will always see you again, in my heart." And at that moment, as if the world were answering him, the wind rustled the pages of the newspaper open on the table. Henry felt a familiar warmth, a breath as light as a child's laughter, and knew that Emily's memory had been awakened. The path had been painful, full of secrets and regrets, but it had led to a profound truth: love never dies, and the memory of loved ones can live on through the actions and hearts of those who remain. Henry turned to Clara, his heart at peace. "Thank you. Without you, I would never have dared to face the truth." Clara smiled at him, mysterious and gentle. "It wasn't me who woke her up, Henry, it was you. And in the silence of dawn, Manhattan seemed to hold its breath, as if to honor the return of a little girl, not to the world of the living, but to the heart of her father, alive forever in his memories and gestures.